And the Siamese twin for osteopath is a chiropractor, so they're bone setters. And osteopathy started in 1888. And it was very interesting the way they went about, but it makes the whole approach to medicine very holistic. It's the third degree I've done. So I did MBBS, and then I did sports medicine from Nottingham, and then medical osteopathy, because while I was doing sports medicine, it wasn't making enough sense. Like, on the pitch side, you can't give medicines and you can't do, exercise and all that stuff. And as an osteopath, you learn more how to touch, how to treat with hands. So that's why I was very excited about it, and it gives you a bigger perspective.
Oh, very nice. Thank you for explaining that. And Darren, coming to you now. I mean, you sound like the bionic man to me because you're a musculoskeletal bioengineer. So I'm thinking that you're putting together back all these skeletons and giving us all these fake body parts. But please tell us what it is that you do. And you're joining us from UK.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Suki. It's an absolute pleasure. So yeah, my original background actually was in sport and exercise science. So that was my first degree. So my real passion came from sport and exercise, obviously as a child being very active. And really I kind of wanted to learn what the science behind exercise was. So, how do we sort of train people to become elite athletes, to perform in sport? But then as I kind of developed through my degree, became really interested in why exercise is such a powerful medicine. So how we can use it to both treat and prevent diseases that we're really seeing at the moment. But as I kind of started on that journey, what I really realized is that if we are going to use exercise to be really, really effective, we have to know as much about why exercise works as how drugs work to treat disease. So that means going all the way down to the microscopic level to understand how exercise has its powerful effect. So that's when I undertook my PhD. And that was in a topic or domain called muscle, cellular and molecular physiology. And essentially what that is looking at muscle cells under the microscope and understanding how they function and how they're affected in certain diseases. What we specifically did was we engineered muscle tissue. So we take muscle cells and essentially we grow muscle in the laboratory, where we can then use that to screen particular drugs or certain therapies, nutrients, even low oxygen conditions, for example, just to see how the muscle responds. So the musculoskeletal bioengineering element, the idea behind that long term is for certain diseases in particular, could we use engineered muscle tissue? Could we use engineered tendon, engineered bone to either treat or replace diseased tissue? So for example, if someone has suffered an injury through a car accident or something like that, and they've lost a certain amount of their muscle tissue, could we actually replace it with the muscle that we grow in the lab? So that's kind of where a lot of my academic research is still based within. That's kind of what we're still trying to achieve. But I'm also still very interested in a lot of the applied elements and, again, how we can use exercise to treat disease.
So I want you to tell us a little bit more about that, because we all superficially know what the benefits of exercise are, but you've studied it very deeply. Please go a little bit deeper and tell us what it is, because although we know it, I think it's good for us to hear it again.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think probably the highlights are very simple, that the fitter we are, the longer the life we lead. So, we live a more prolonged life, but we also live a healthier life. So if we go a little bit deeper than that, what we understand now from a lot of the science in medicine is that the fitter you are, the actual, the causes of death are significantly reduced. So basically the all-cause mortality risk is significantly reduced. So basically you're less likely to die of any cause if you're generally fitter. So that means cardiovascularly fit, so being able to walk, being able to run. But also more recently, even within the last sort of 2 or 3 years, we've also understood that muscle strength is really important. So the stronger you are, the more healthy you are going to be in older age and the less likelihood of you dying as well. So both being cardiovascularly fit, so being able to walk, being able to run, for example, and being strong, they're the two really important elements for a long, healthy life.
And what made both of you come together to kind of create this book? What was kind of the driving vision behind it?
I'll just add more actually to what Darren was saying earlier before we get onto this one. Basically from the era of, say, Ramayana and Mahabharata, so we are talking about 3,000, 4,000 years ago, or when we go back to the Romans or the Greeks, this knowledge of how important physical activity is, we've known it forever. What has happened is just now that has become very in thing, popular, go to the gym and go exercise and all that. When we were more active, we were not talking much about it. Whereas today, when we are actually more slobs, we find it very, very romantic, talking about the gym, talking about the exercise.
That's what I'm going to come to ask you, because they're saying now that sitting is the new smoking. So because, let's face it, in COVID times, we're all home stuck and most of us are sitting for most of the day. So for a normal person, what is the amount of movement that is required in a day?
Yeah. So,
is it 10,000 steps? Should we be on our pedometers?
It's very flawed. So when people say about the 10,000 steps, there's no why 10,000 steps and why not 9,999 or why not 10,001. So the thing is, it's out of thin air. It's a round figure. So there's no science to 10,000 steps. There isn't any. But at a generic level, at a mass level, it's actually a great advice that get moving. That's the idea. So, but 10,000 itself doesn't make any sense. Idea is do more than what you did yesterday. Become your better version compared to yesterday. That's very important, rather than seeing a fixed number. Again, WHO talks about minutes, how many minutes you should do and all that. We are of the form of
because we like that, because that gives us, unfortunately, we're so conditioned to a target, right? So when it says 10,000, we're like, okay, at least I'm at 9,500. I can do 500 more.
It's like this. If someone is beginning, is starting, even 1,000 steps is very good. But at the same time, someone like me who probably runs like 10 kilometers every day, 10,000 is actually useless. That's lesser than what I would have done otherwise. So it is about what you were yesterday, where were you yesterday? Can you do a little bit more? Can you do longer? Can you do faster? Can you do different things? Can you do strength training? So all those things come together. That becomes a very, very important part. And Darren, over to you. If you want to add something to this.
No, I think actually that's the best advice that we can give, because actually, if we go back to what I was saying about understanding how exercise works all the way down the level of the microscope, that's exactly how it works. It works by actually doing more than we did last time. So if you walk more steps than you did yesterday, you're challenging your body to the point where it has to adapt. So it adapts to give you those additional health benefits. So as long as you continually progress, and that can be in so many different ways. So, if you are used to running 10 kilometers per day for the last 10 years, how can you do things differently to continually challenge your body? As long as we're challenging the body every single time we exercise, then you're going to be seeing the benefits and the improvements. So even if, you haven't exercised for the last 10 years and you can only manage to do 1 or 2 minutes of walking, that's absolutely fantastic. Tomorrow, try and do 10 seconds more, 20 seconds more, 30 seconds more. That's how you stimulate the body to get those health improvements. So the targets are great. They're there. They're set out by all the international bodies, WHO, all of these types of organizations. But they're kind of the figures that we should be aspiring to longer term. Day to day, it's all about trying to improve and just doing better than we did yesterday.
I'm going to take Sangeeta's question because I think it's very relevant, and I'm going to come back to how you two came together for this book. And we're going to get into back pain, bone loss, knee pain. So don't worry. I think we've got all those questions listed here. But Sangeeta is asking, can people revive themselves using exercise for reviving original health post a disease condition? Like if, for example, you're afflicted with cancer, kidney disease, or a hysterectomy, or even osteoarthritis, especially for people who have been active before, yet afflicted with these ailments. Can there be a comeback to the original glory, especially for those in their 50s to 80s?
So I'll just start from the last bit, especially for those 50 to 80s. So one thing is age is overrated. So age is a number. Age is how you feel, what you make of life at a certain time. So don't go by the number of years you've been on this planet Earth, the third rocker on this, the star sun. So it's about what you've done during that time. And, that kind of tells you how fit are you or not. So don't get carried away by numbers. I've had I've had a 90-year-old gentleman walk in and say, hey, I want to be healthier. And that's happened multiple times. And, younger people than that have come and said the same thing. So saying there's always muscles are, or the human body is in a way where if you put it under strain, it'll actually get better. If it's the right strain it's put under, it'll always get stronger. It'll always get fitter. As we age, the adaptation is a little slower. And again, Darren will get a lot more technical about all this. But the body has a capacity to get better and stronger all the time, no matter what age. Just slows down a tiny bit as we age. Okay, so that's a very important part because aging is mentioned here. About diseases, when any of this happens, like a kidney disease or cancer or hysterectomy or any changes like that, right? Osteoarthritis is a classic one. We read in medical college 20 odd years ago, and even today, the textbook of medicine says it's an irreversible disease, effectively saying you're downhill when you have knee pain, arthritis. That's actually incorrect. What we've learned now is it is reversible if you're doing the right loading, if you are walking around, if you're doing strength training, if you're getting those muscles to be stronger, if you're mobilizing the body parts, it starts responding and it's actually reversible. You will feel better, you will get better. And when those MRIs are done or the X-rays are done, surprise, surprise, it's actually better than before. So idea is, yes, it can be doing this. Coming to things like cancer or kidney disease, cancer effectively, the body is not working optimally. Think about it, both conditions in a way, it's not fuel efficient body when you have those two conditions like chronic disease, anything. So with exercise, and when we use the word exercise, we have these four verticals that we keep talking about. We talk about mental health, we talk about sleep, we talk about nutrition for the body and the mind, and then we talk about the physical activity. So always think about the four. Never look at isolation only. And surprisingly, they start behaving better. The body is becoming more fuel efficient when you start doing those things, addressing all those things together. And the idea is, there's a good chance the disease might go away. There's a good chance it might not. But what is of interest, a lot of interest to us, is the quality of life. Saying, how does this improve your quality of life? How do we get you back being independent and doing things? Of course, your chances of getting back are higher if you already have been active before. If you haven't, not bad, it's okay. What's done is done, but it's good time that you start now then with it. Okay, so it's almost like when people come to me for the back pain, for example, I would end up telling them, hey, it's almost a blessing in disguise. Wake up call, come on, get on with it, right? So yes, you can revive to quite an extent. A lot of our colleagues don't talk about all of this because the safest way is to tell you not to do anything.
Yeah, no, because a lot of people are also very afraid of the pressure on the joints, and especially when you're aging. So I know you're going to come to that, but I want to also get how you two came together to write this book and what was the purpose of the book. And I know you have 4 tips to share before we'll get into all of these questions.
Darren, go for it.
So the basic background is that I was actually in India for an academic visit to visit some colleagues at both the All India Institute of Medical Sciences and the Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi. And we have an alumni network at the university in which I work, spread across the world, and they try and host individuals when they're on a visit in a particular country. And one of the members of the alumni network in Delhi is one of Rajat's previous college batchmates, or I think he attended the same medical college at least. And he was hosting me for dinner one evening. And I think it was, in fact, the day before we were due to go to dinner, he emailed me saying, hi, Darren, really looking forward to meeting you tomorrow. I've just had a look at your profile, and I don't think we've really got much in common. So this friend of Rajat's is an audiovestibular physician, so someone who looks at the inner ear, balance, things like that. So obviously that's kind of slightly out of my remit. I'm not particularly familiar with his discipline. He's not particularly familiar with mine. So he said, oh, do you mind if I bring a friend? I said, absolutely not. That's absolutely fine. And that friend obviously turned out to be Rajat. And within about 2 minutes of meeting, we'd already kind of hit it off. We discussed that we had common sort of friends and colleagues who worked in the same field. Obviously, Rajat had studied in Nottingham. I'd worked in Nottingham. So yeah, we kind of just hit it off from there.
And we've all heard about Nottingham, so we're all with you.
Fantastic.
But go ahead, tell us, what is the main purpose of the book? Because you talk about the 4 pillars. So let's get into that, because we have lots of questions that we'll get into afterwards.
Of course, yeah. So we really wanted to take a different approach when writing this book. And I think this phrase is overused at the moment, but it kind of summarizes it quite well. And I think it'd be good for your audience, is to take a holistic view of health. So we know that physical activity, movement and exercise is really, really important. But if you don't get some other things correct, you don't get those fundamentals in place, then you're not going to be able to exercise and perform to the best of your ability. So we start with sleep. Sleep obviously is absolutely fundamental to health. If you're not sleeping properly, then, you know, a lot of diseases can manifest. You're obviously going to be really tired and fatigued, and you're not going to be able to exercise properly. We talk about nutrition.
Before we go now, what is your recommendation for sleep? So, because this is one of those questions we're always going to come back to, because we want to know, because some people feel really good on 6 hours of sleep and others are still tired after 8.
So that was actually going to be our question to the audience. How many hours of sleep on average do most people get? It'd be really interesting to see, actually.
Six to 7, 8, 6, 5 to 6, 6, Pinky says. So I think between 6 to 8 is what I'm seeing as the numbers.
Yeah. So there's actually a really interesting stat that came out from some scientific research recently, which suggests that now we're getting as much as 25% less sleep than we were about 10 years ago. So, you know, 25% less sleep is a significant proportion. And we know that that's now linked to a lot of diseases, actually, particularly heart disease, reductions in sleep. That's been sort of surveyed across a number of world surveys now. So 6 to 8 hours sleep, that probably is actually quite reflective of the broader society worldwide, actually, 6 to 8 hours. But yeah, should we get into a bit of a recommendation, Raja?
Yes, yes, yes.
Of course, of course.
The one thing we're really going to discuss was sleep hygiene. So obviously sleep amount is really important. But if for whatever reason you have certain restrictions around your sleep time, so say, for example, you know, you have a busy work schedule, family schedule, and you only have 6 hours to sleep, you have to make sure that you've got everything set up to sleep most efficiently. So by sleep hygiene, what we mean is the environment in which you sleep is set up perfectly to get the best out of your sleep. So for example, you don't have a TV in your bedroom. You're not sort of watching TV immediately before you fall asleep. You're not on your mobile phone immediately before you sleep. You don't have any other distractions, you know, a lot of noise. The actual environment in terms of the bed, the pillows, the bedclothes, the temperature, everything like that is set up to give you the best chance to sleep in the best possible way. So sleep hygiene is absolutely fundamental and is something that a lot of people actually forget about now.
I think that's what even Ankita is asking. How important is it to evaluate the quality of one's sleep and work on it? There are a lot of cool features coming in with various smartwatches these days. And that can also be a bit distracting because it's like monitoring everything you're doing while you're sleeping.
Yeah, so I'll draw a parallel between those same watches for running. Same watches are used for that. Now, someone like me, when these watches were coming out, say 25, 30 years ago, I mean, I was wearing them then. And I don't wear any heart rate monitor, any of that right now. So the thing is, learn to listen to your body and you'll do beautifully well rather than just thinking about gadgets. Gadgets are very helpful. They are very helpful. Don't become a slave to them. They're supposed to be your slaves, if at all. So, you know, we need to know who is supposed to be the boss, not the other way around. So don't worry about just the numbers on that. Okay, so I'll just slow down what Darren just said. So I'll just again, repeat that in a different way. So basically, screen time has increased in the last 20 years massively. Since the smartphones have happened, things have changed drastically for us. And that's a very big reason for the 25% reduction in sleep time. Now, so what is the first step? And again, Darren did say this, so I'm repeating it. Don't, for the last half an hour to 1 hour before sleep, do not, it's tough. It's not an easy one that I'm saying, but don't use your smartphone or your iPad or your even phone, television before you sleep. Half an hour to 45 minutes to maybe even an hour before.
So what are you supposed to do? We're so used to watching TV and falling asleep.
Yeah, there used to be things like books, for example, which have disappeared, right? And talk to people rather than talking to people on phone and ignoring the person right next to you. Well, talk to that person. Hey, how's your day? Right? Now, let's go back to the era when these phones didn't exist. We were still surviving. And it was high quality life then. So saying it is high time. I mean, we need to draw boundaries somewhere. Because what happens is if you have that screen in front of you and the blue light coming at you, it's already affecting your quality of sleep because you will not get to sleep right away then. It'll delay your good sleep, all right? So it's a very good question or point, Ankit. The quality matters a lot more than just the duration, right? So that's one first step, that please cut down on the blue light for the last 1 hour, maybe, or half an hour at least before you sleep. The other thing that Darren spoke about was how light should be there in the room in any case. Dim the light in the room. For the last half an hour at least, reduce it by half. So if 4 lights are on, make it 2, make it 1, okay? You're preparing the room to sleep again, right? Just don't think you'll just lie down there and you'll be off sleeping. I mean, most of us jump around in the bed for next half an hour. Why don't we do it the other way around? Why don't we pull it forwards, right? Prepare the room for that, okay? And again, one very important point Dan touched on was don't have the television in the first place in that room, because our bodies are very interesting, or our minds for that reason. When it's a multitasking room, we think it's a multitasking room, and it's not a room for sleep or rest or recovery. It's a room. Bedroom is called a bedroom, so let's use it for that, right? So recovery, rest, leisure, just relaxing totally. Now, these are very important things. And another thing is connected to the next one, probably, or the third thing that we talk about is nutrition. Your dinner should have been done 2 to 3 hours before you hit the bed. Once you do that, you prepare yourself for sleep in any case. So that's very important. And there's something called sleep deficit. I mean,
No, but let's come back to that, because that's very tough with a lot of the Indian schedules, because most people get home, so how do they adjust for that? Because that's something that's very important, because most people get home by 8, 9, they have dinner at 9:30, so you're going to bed by 10:30, 11.
One thing that I keep telling people is try sleeping today, don't sleep tomorrow. So your definite cutoff has to be today. All right. So don't cross the midnight. Start working with that and then start pulling back from there. So, then start with an 11:30 and a 10, 11 and a 10 and whatever else. Okay. Now, I, for example, have my dinner by 6:37, and then 9:30, 10 is the target sleep time because I need to get up by, for my runs and stuff like that. So I think it's a work in progress. It doesn't happen overnight. So all of us can aspire to, can we do dinner by maybe 8, maybe latest by 9, and hence that 11:30 or a 10:30 is, it's workable. But as I said, I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. Start changing by 15 minutes, 20 minutes here and there. You're going in the right direction. That's pretty good.
And now the second question. A lot of kids these days are nocturnal creatures, as they say. They say their most productive hours. And even we all said it while we were in college, right? That, we're more productive in the nighttime. What about them? Is there any recommendation for the younger generation?
So, yeah, there is. Before this, artificial light came along, we used to follow nature or natural light for our eating habits and for our sleep habits. There was no way around it. So we need to kind of we don't have to go back all the way, but we need to kind of, learn something from nature, saying, let's just start respecting it, because that's connected to how our biological cycle works. So when it's dark outside naturally, that's when the melatonin is released. That's the one that's very important for recovery. If it's not released, which wouldn't be if you're staying up at night, you're not recovering well enough, and you can call yourself whatever, right? The nocturnal, this and that. The point really is you haven't recovered the way you should have if you weren't sleeping at night. And that's where I come from. You're like, why am I talking about sleep today, not tomorrow kind of a thing, or go to bed? Because it's around that time. It's like at a 1, 2, that's the peak time the melatonin is coming out, is being released. And if you get up, you never make up for it. And a lot of people would argue saying, but I work better when I do this. Have you tried not doing this? Have you tried a different way? And if you haven't given it a shot for a month, 2 months, you actually have no idea how does the other thing work. So it's about experimenting. It's about trying out. Does it work better that way? And again, there are very interesting studies that have come out on similar, because of these American times and Australian times, and we work on all of the times but our own. Whether you're sitting in the UK or India or wherever, right? If you're not sleeping at night and you're doing those shifts of European times and American times and whatever, it's been found that you would age by a decade or more if you do that just for a few years.
Wow.
And that's tricky. So suddenly when we talk about age, now that's aging. So those diseases coming a lot sooner that wouldn't have come otherwise, because you're messing up your regular routine, your regular natural routine. So that's a very big advice that I keep giving people, youngsters or whoever, saying, please, it's okay for a couple of years, but then don't do that, please. Take a cut in the package of a 25% or whatever, but get that high quality of life. Because as much as you're getting that higher salary and a package right now, don't worry, soon enough, you'll be giving it to someone like me when you're in the hospital, and you'll be giving it with a higher premium then. Okay. So all your fixed deposits will have to be broken and all that stuff. So might as well be smart about it today.
Yes, health is the biggest wealth. So we're going to go. So sleep, number 1. What's the next one?
The next one is nutrition. So
when we think of nutrition, we think athletes are just going to tell us to eat protein. But when I hear this.
Well, yeah, so again, we were actually going to ask the audience a question about whether anyone's actually undertaken any fad diets, and if so, which ones. There's a lot of commercial fad diets out there, and some of them have worked for people and some obviously haven't. But yeah, they've become even more popularized in recent years, particularly with social media. So someone said here, intermittent fasting. Yeah, that's probably one of the most popular at the moment. Oh, I think that was you, Suki.
Yes, it's me. I think everybody else is quiet. They're waiting to see. They don't want to admit to all the fad diets that we do.
So what we actually discuss in the book is the no diet diet.
Yeah, so it also says keto.
Keto, yeah, very, very popular. Low carbohydrate diet, high fat diet, high protein diet. Basically, any way that you can manipulate the nutritional intake has been tried as a diet. That's probably the story here. But I think, as I was saying, what we really advocate in the book is the no diet diet approach. And it goes back to what Rajat was saying before about really just trying to get back to the basics, trying to understand what your actual body needs for basic nutrition. So, really revisiting some of the fundamentals. So water intake, how much water intake are you actually getting throughout the day? Are you consuming enough water, enough quality water, or is it just very processed drinks, tea, coffee, fizzy drinks, for example, or even energy drinks, which is really popular now? That's not going to give you the same nutritional value as water is.
So how much water, Darren? I'm going to ask this, and what kind of water? Because there's this whole thing about all these aerated waters and these different types of purifiers that are all in the market now.
Of course, yeah. For everyone, it is going to be very different. And particularly, obviously, in a hot and humid environment, it's also going to be different. But the general rule of thumb is you should be drinking about 2.5 to 3 liters of water per day. But the biggest indicator is obviously your urine output. So that's the biggest monitor that you can actually use. If you're frequently urinating and your urine obviously is a nice pale color, then generally enough, you're hydrated well. You know, if you're not urinating frequently, and then when you do go to the toilet, it's very dark.
When you say frequently, 4 to 6 hours?
Probably less.
Probably less, okay.
You should be going to the toilet maybe every 2 to 3 hours to urinate. Okay. Then you have that good kind of turnover. You're drinking enough water. But the other really good indicator is thirst. So you should be drinking to thirst. So don't feel as if you have to have a 2 or 3 liter bottle of water, or as now people carry around these gallon jugs that you see in America. You know, you're just constantly sipping on that water. You know, drink to thirst. And I think actually a lot of people, there's quite a famous professor who's worked in hydration for a number of years, who always used to comment on people carrying bottles around. We've lost our sense of just being able to determine whether we're thirsty or not. You know, if you're thirsty, have a drink. Don't force yourself to drink water, but the general target should be, 2.5 to 3 liters. Obviously, if you're sweating a lot more, that might need to be increased. But obviously keep an eye on the amount that you're urinating and how often, and obviously the color as well. They're the kind of really good key indicators. I'm sure Rajat's got some more to offer as well.
Yeah, so just carrying on from this, drink to thirst. What's really fascinating, again, this was something highlighted by Professor Timothy Knox. No dog ever dies of, overhydration, but human beings do. We can never have enough. If something's put in front of us, we want more and more and more. We're just greedy people, right? The species. So point really is, if you're not thirsty, and if you've kept your, the food pipe and mouth moist a little bit, especially in summers, you're doing great. Don't drink in gallons, drink in sips. Now, that's something different from a lot of other thought processes out there, drink a liter right away. No, don't do that, please. That's not the right way to go about it, because I know when we go.
A lot of people say wake up and have like 2 cups of water as soon as you get up or something.
Cups are still fine, but there are some who are having 1.5 liters and 2. Now, that's a problem that we have. There's a company called Weight Watchers, and there's a particular case that I remember from London, and there are multiple cases like that have happened. So the whole idea behind Weight Watchers is cut down on your energy intake. So if you have water, you're filling up your tummy, and it's 0 calories kind of a thing. So this lady actually served the family lunch, went up, had her 2-3 liters or whatever, and didn't come down for an hour or so. And then they rushed up, and you know what? She was down on the ground, flat, dead. So overhydration is more dangerous than dehydration. So as much as Darren was saying that, but he said something very important there. He said, drink to thirst. Don't carry those big bottles with you. Drink in sips, not liters together. Very, very crucial, right? Overhydration can lead to swelling of the brain, can affect the kidney, and can literally do this very quickly if you've done too much of it, okay? So please drink to thirst, see how much you're urinating, the color of the urine. Those are very important parts. And you're doing pretty good with that. So drink to thirst. Dogs, you give them a bucket, even in the heat. You'll be surprised the bucket will not get empty in the day. They'll keep sipping on it. They'll keep having it if and when required. They will just not be because the water's there, do it. Now, this is a very interesting one. When running events happen, there are a lot of bottles all around. Every 2 kilometers or 1.5 kilometers or a kilometer, there'll be these small bottles and plastic glasses and all that, or paper glasses, and there'll be water and other things. Now, there's a registration fees for the race. Now, humans are very interesting. So because they've paid 1,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees, they want all that money back. And how they can have it back is by drinking all the water available. And that's the wrong way to go about it. And we see trouble, we see problems because of that. So please drink to thirst and make sure you're not thirsty. Have more during summers than during winters. Electrolytes, So that's in addition to what Darren was saying. Electrolytes matter a lot more than plain water. So simple stuff like ORS. ORS is available at any chemist, right? And there are different brands out there which do that. And there are new flavors now. Earlier it was very bland, but now you have orange and you have lemon and stuff like that. So have that. You don't have to spend on expensive brands. ORS works wonderfully well, by the way. It's a WHO recommended, combination that they have. It does a great job. In summers, definitely have a glass or two of ORS electrolyte-based liquid that you're actually having. While we're at electrolytes and water and stuff like that, please cut down majorly on aerated drinks, because even the ones that are called 0 calories, all that, why are you having it if it's 0 calories? Then have water, right? It's pretty useless stuff. So yeah, that's the thing about hydration.
And what about other tips on nutrition?
Darren?
So taking it forward from what Rajat was saying there is, if it doesn't have any nutritional value, then you shouldn't be having it. The same goes for food. So really, we've kind of lost our compass to be able to say, when we're actually looking to consume foods, what nutritional value is this going to be giving me? So rather than, going out and having a fast food meal, which really is going to give you hardly any nutritional benefit whatsoever, really think about what your body needs. So for example, if you've been out for a walk, or you've been out for a run, or you've been to the gym to do some resistance training, then you're more likely going to need some carbohydrate to replenish your energy stores. You're going to need some protein. So what kind of sources are you going to be looking towards to get those nutrients on board? They're the kind of things, is the intuitive nutrition. That's kind of what we're really trying to advocate. Really start to understand, what does your body need? Where can you get that from? And what are the types of nutrients that you need to be looking towards? So the basic tips, we should be going back to single ingredient foods. Avoid highly processed foods. Where possible, try and eat organic, fresh food. So avoiding trying to go to the supermarket where there might be kind of additives and preservatives added to a lot of food products these days. Obviously, avoid highly prepared and highly processed food. Try and make as much of the food as you possibly can. And by that way, you're minimizing all of those additives and preservatives, additional sugars, additional fats and oils and everything like that that could be added to the food. So single ingredient, basic organic food where possible, and making sure that you're getting enough carbohydrates, protein, and good quality fat sources. We can give some examples if people would like to hear those.
No, definitely. But we'll also take 2 questions that have come in. So Sangeeta is asking, what about these fancy pro-mineral drinks that are recommended post-exercise? And also, I think lots of things that you should have protein before. What about all those myths or facts? And Suman is asking, Nariyal Pani or coconut water, is that a good substitute for, or is that a good electrolyte? And there was a question earlier that was asked about sattvic foods, which are becoming very much in vogue here, which Ankita is asking about.
Rajat, you're on mute.
Rajat, you're muted. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm back. So intermittent fasting. What's very interesting about intermittent fasting is we've done it forever. Before we became very westernized. Sorry, mate. Before the light bulb happened, we were sleeping at 7, 8, 9, right? And we were getting up at 4. So we were sleeping not even 9. We were sleeping at 7. It was dark. We were already sleeping. So if you do the math, you're adding up to like a 14-hour kind of gap between the dinner and breakfast in any case. So on a regular basis, we were intermittent fasting. So it's just a fancy new term, which has been done forever, and it's repackaged. It's like basmati rice, done by the Americans. It's Indian, for God's sake. So same, intermittent fasting's been there forever. And be smart with it. Don't be silly with it. It is very powerful, but just don't use one thing in isolation. It doesn't work. So that's the thing about the whole intermittent fasting. About the question on
coconut water.
Pro-mineral waters and stuff. So I won't care too much about the so-called pro-mineral waters, the way they are done, I won't really bother too much. Understand one thing about food, that if you have good, well-balanced diet, that's what it's supposed to be. That's what food is supposed to be. Your supplements are called supplements for good reason. They're supposed to supplement. They're not supposed to replace your good food, right? Your regular diet that is there. Now, what is happening with this whole nutraceutical industry is exactly that. They're trying to replace. No, that's not the idea. I mean, that shouldn't be the case. The whole food, let's have that, right? Then if something's missing, fair enough. But don't try replacing it. So I would say have your vitamins and all that. Make sure it happens from your regular diet, and you're not then adding whatever stuff later to water. I mean, that's kind of silly. In any case, when we talk about energy foods for exercise, for running and gymming and other things, most people, bless you, most people who are getting started, who are beginning, who are starting with stuff like that, they do not need supplements unnecessarily. They do not need it. They'll do very well having good meals, good diet plans, and stuff like that. If they just follow basic stuff. So that's very, very important. Proteins. It's been overdone with this whole gym. How many scoops do you need? And
the protein shakes. And
go eat your lunch, breakfast, dinner well, and you'll do okay. All right. So rather than those powders only. So I think that's very important that we start getting our priorities right, because your regular food needs to be better rather than just things like that. Having said that, it is important as we are starting to do more and more, as we're doing higher duration, longer duration of the run and faster and gym, high intensity stuff. So we need to be then replacing, because the energy that's being consumed is a lot more than your regular food can do. And then you need it. Then you need to replace. And so it suddenly becomes very important then, before, during, after kind of a thing. So, if you're going to be running 4 hours, no, your regular meals are not going to help. Then we need to make sure how that's taken care of. So yes, there's a need, but I'm not a big fan of the plain water with those minerals and all that. I mean, that's
and what
kind
about
of
nariyal pani, the coconut water?
Love it. Totally love it. So it does a great job. Does it replace enough? No, it doesn't. But, that's my favorite thing. If I'm running at a park and if there's a nariyal pani guy outside, I would almost always have it. Now, what is very interesting, having electrolytes at the right time, during and after, and having proteins, especially after, it energizes you a lot sooner. Otherwise, what happens is after a high intensity workout or a long workout, even if it's low intensity, you will feel tired the whole day. And it's defeating the whole purpose of doing those exercise and activities. So it's very important to recover and use those, like, as I said, the food supplements and all that to recover better and get back sooner.
Bavleen is also asking, can you guide on regular food items for healthy living, as Indian diets are full of carbs and fats? Please give examples of protein items. All
right. So Darren's half an Indian at least, so he'll start. He's married to a Punjabi girl, so it's an Indian household he lives in.
It certainly is, yeah. I think the question here around an Indian diet is full of carbs and fats. I think every diet should be full of carbs and fats. It just is about the amount and when you're actually consuming them. So if you're looking at a basic Indian diet in terms of either having roti or having rice, they're absolutely fine to have. It's just the volume that you're having them. And also, obviously, if you're performing exercise at high intensity or whatever, you can obviously have some more, or you can just tailor it back slightly. In terms of the fat content, there's been a lot of debate in recent years around whether we should be using oils, whether we should be using ghee, for example. And to be honest, I think the jury is still very much out on that. But actually, the amount of additional nutrition that's provided in ghee is far superior to oils. And also in terms of oils, they can be contaminated very heavily. The quality of the omega-3s, for example, that are found in these oils can be very poor. So again, unless you can actually access really good quality organic first pressed oils, then there's no harm in using some ghee. Just try and make sure that you're not using too much. I think, if you're putting ghee on 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9 roti every single day, then obviously that's probably not going to be a good idea. But just listen to your body. Again, it's similar to the drinking, is you should only be eating to full satiety. So when you're actually feeling full, that's when you stop eating. The issue that we actually have now in modern society is that we actually eat far too quickly. So because our, basically the way that our hunger works is through a hormone system, it obviously takes a while for those hormones to be activated to send to the brain to tell us that we're full. So we have to give our body enough time to be able to respond once we've eaten. So if we really eat our food very, very quickly, we can quite easily overeat. And then afterwards we feel very bloated, we feel very full, because we've actually eaten too much. We haven't given our body enough time to respond to the amount of food that we're eating. So probably what I would suggest, slow down your food intake. The basic Indian diet is absolutely fine. As I was saying, single ingredient, the best quality foods that you can buy. If you're having sabjis, if you're having dal, for example, good protein source, beans, a good protein source, you know, they are all absolutely fine foods to eat, but just make sure that you're, you know, minimizing the amount of ghee, for example, that you're putting in, or oils that you're putting in. That's probably the key message to take away.
Excellent.
I'll just add to that. So ghee, for example, so over last 20 years, it's been very fascinating how it's kind of gone full circle, or half a circle at least, in the last 20 years. So we were being told, don't have ghee at all 20 years ago. And before that, 20 years before that, it was have as much as you can. We have pretty much come back to the whole point, the same point from 30 to 40 years ago, saying have it. So have it, but don't, you know, have it on top of the roti kind of a thing, or makhan, for example, right? Have it like Christian would type of a thing, and it's totally fine. The point is, as soon as you're going to put it on, you know, you're going to heat it up, you're going to mess it up. So that's a very, very important point to actually remember about this, that please, the fat is very good, especially the way the Indians do it. The makhan and the ghee is a great one. About the carbohydrates, what is very important is, I mean, I'll take you back in time a little. So 30 years
We're
ago.
going to need 1 more hour with you guys, because we have only covered 2 points, you know that.
All right, so why not? But what happened was, imagine, you know, when our ancestors were going to the farms, and most of us weren't doing very good financially, right? I mean, we were struggling, we were trying to stay alive. And we were just filling our tummies. It wasn't the most nutritious food that time. So the idea was, let's have a moti roti and, you know, fill our tummies up, and that's about it. It was more out of the need of the hour, rather than saying, is that the most nutritious stuff? And that's what it's become now. I mean, you know, our rotis are very thick. They don't need to be. So one very big advice for North Indians is, please make them thin, make them wafer thin. They need to be worked used like covers, wraps, rather than becoming the mainstay of the whole diet. They should not be. Very important. As soon as you do that, you've already reduced your carbohydrate intake by a half or a third or something like that. Just start with that. Same with rice. I would say, please reduce the volume. Same. I'm just repeating what Darren was saying. But please do that, because that's a good starting point. Increase your sabzi. Your proteins, mix things up. It's very interesting when you do that. You have proteins in them, you know, whether it's legumes or your sprouts. Sprouts are great. Sprouts from different sources. Do that. Sprouts that are there for the last 2-3 days that are there, please take them. They become very, very interesting that way. If you can take eggs, great. If you are a non-vegetarian, even better, because it's a lot more powerful. I mean, I know in today's world, we're talking about non-meat kind of a thing, but for various reasons. But proteins become very, very important part. So suddenly we changed the whole pie chart, or, you know, whatever we guys read in school, because it was flawed. It wasn't right. There was too much weightage on carbohydrates. We need to change that. And while we're on nutrition, please change the timings. As I said, our dinners need to be an hour or 2 earlier at least. Shift it. Start shifting it by 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Start pulling it up. And you'll start sleeping better as well. Dinner should not be spicy, especially cut down the chilies. in dinner because you don't sleep well then. So it's just that it's so well, connected, all of these things. We need to pay attention to them, yeah.
The other thing to add to that as well is that I think in all cultures across the world, we've been conditioned to consume certain foods at certain times of the day. And that definitely doesn't need to be the case. So obviously in Western culture, in the UK, the States or whatever, we've been conditioned to eat breakfast cereals in the morning. We'll have a light lunch of sandwiches or whatever it might be, and then we'll have a large cooked meal in the evening. But it really doesn't have to be like that at all. You can eat whatever food you want to eat at whatever time of the day. And it really should just be responsive to how you feel. So, for example, if in the morning you feel as if you need to have something a bit heavier because you're feeling a bit hungry or you need to be energized for the day, then that's the type of food you should be consuming. If you've got a very active day, you're very active with your job, or you have a lot of movement to be doing throughout the day, you probably don't want a particularly heavy lunch. But then if you know that you're not going to be home until very late and you don't want a heavy dinner, maybe you can make some time in the middle of the day to have a larger meal then. So then in the evening, you can have a lighter meal that then is going to allow you to sleep a lot better when you finally get to bed. So it's just listening to what your body needs and just using that common sense practice really when it comes to nutrition.
Well, excellent. But we are at 6:55 and we have 2 more items. So I don't know how we're going to quickly cover that, but I'd like to understand at least what they both are.
Okay, let me give it a shot first. So mental health is very, very important. What has happened is we've isolated it too much. So we work with silos. So the mind is the brain that's kind of working with the mind and which resides in the body. And now we basically say the mind goes on to the ends of the fingers and the toes and hairs and everything. So mind is everywhere. Mind is all around us. And then is the body. So we can't separate it out. What I would really want everyone to think about is, please treat yourself bigger than what most of my colleagues do. You're not a painful joint. You're not a diseased body. You're a human body. You're a whole bigger than that. And if you're not addressing the mind first, you're in a mess. You can't really think about the painful part or the diseased part. So that's a very, very important part. And sleep comes in directly next to that, right? I mean, either if your mental health, for whatever reason, personal or professional, they're not sleeping well, and it's going to be a vicious circle, and it affect your physical fitness, and then you'll not eat well, right? About the physical activity, get started with, we touched that in the very beginning. Just do a little bit more than what you did yesterday. Don't be in a rat race. Don't be thinking you're 15 years old. You're not. You're probably 16 now. So, just do a little bit more than yesterday and gradually build it up. One baby step at a time. When we say strength training, it does not mean going to the gym. It means, hey, listen, you know what? Get up, sit down on the chair and get up again. And if you do that 5 times, that's squats, right? So you've done squats. So there's simple things that can be done. So just get started with that. Become a more fuel efficient body. And one last one for me is become your best friend. And then you can be a better friend to whoever else around. And it's not selfish when you're your best friend. So with all this will come, become your best friend. Over to you, Darren.
And I have one more question before I let Darren speak. I will come to Darren. Strong bones, because, for women, especially, this is a big thing, especially as we're aging. So I would love to get both of your tips for that, because of all the stuff that we've heard about calcium and aging. Then you can wrap up.
So strong bones, it's a total wrong advice what is given. Don't run because your knees will hurt or your bones will become weak as you age. It's the reverse. When you are loading it, only then will the bones become stronger. Muscles are needed to move those joints. So let's move them. Let's get them stronger together. It's called musculoskeletal system because muscles and skeleton can't be separated out. Most people do, but that's wrong. So please, it is very important, get moving. If there is pain, don't stop. It just means back off for then, but get back at it. You were made to move. You were not made to be a piece of furniture. So don't act like a piece of furniture. Don't be told to just sit down somewhere like a piece of furniture. It's important that you keep moving because otherwise you will not move after that if you just keep sitting. So very important that you do that. And that's about it. Vitamin D3, very important. COVID has brought it to the forefront. but it is very important, has been very important for a very long time. So that's a very important part. Again, ghee becomes very important suddenly, ghee and makhan. When you're talking about the bone strength, please don't let anyone tell you if you have a slight bit of a knee pain that, hey, it's time to retire from life. That's rubbish. Please keep moving.
Darren, your thoughts? I would love to hear them too.
I think Rajat summarized it really well. The most important thing, obviously, with women as well, is thinking about post-menopause and the effect that that can have on the bone system as well. And as Rajat was saying, don't slow down. If anything, we really should be focusing more on load-bearing exercise. And the bones can only be loaded when we move the muscles. And I think there's certain types of exercises that you can be focusing on. Swimming and things like that are great, but they're not really load bearing enough. They're not putting enough strain on the bone for the bone to actually respond to increase in terms of the bone mineral density. So getting up on your feet, walking, running, doing some strength training. And as Rajat was saying, it doesn't have to be going to the gym and doing Olympic lifts and, hoping to represent India at the next Olympics. It literally can just be getting up and down from your chair, walking up and down some stairs, doing that repeated for a number of repetitions, and that is sufficient for strength training to improve muscle and bone health. So yeah, just take one step at a time, literally, and yeah, hopefully you'll be increasing your muscle strength and bone strength together.
Thank you both, Rajat and Darren. Thank you for joining us. And like I said, we could have gone on for another hour. That was amazing.
Thank you so much
very much for having us.